Feelings equals data from the heart. Feelings are also a dimension. There are an infinite number of dimensions that are limited primarily by observing and measuring devices. For example, if we had no human heart, we wouldn't have feelings about something. And feelings offer a particular insight into that which we have feelings about. There's a couple of kind of dimensional aspects to feelings. One of them is the insight, because every observing and measuring device, in this case the human heart, provides a unique insight into something. And some dimensions, some observing and measuring devices, reveal more useful data than others. For example, if you look at the money system today, which is primarily a digital transfer mechanism. So to transfer $1 million from this bank account in the US to this bank account in Singapore, a series of electrical charges are sent over fiber optic cables, and the $1 million disappears in this account and the $1 million appears in the other account. And you can think of two noticeable dimensions to track that transfer with. One would be the dimension of power. So for example, it takes a certain amount of electricity to send the signals from San Francisco to Singapore, as an example. And so you could track that energy exchange on the electrical dimension and say it consumed X watts of energy. So you'd say, okay, we consumed X watts for 0.5 seconds, and something happened. Something moved over. Now the other is the number dimension. We moved 1 million. So 1 million went to 0 here, and 0 went to 1 million over here. Now, which dimension would be more useful to track the $1 million movement? Because there are a lot of different things that could take 1 watt of energy. You might have sent a tweet from the US to Singapore, and it might have consumed 1 watt. You might have sent $100,000, and it might have consumed the same watt of electricity to send the pulses, relatively speaking, than to send $1 million. So the electrical dimension wouldn't be terribly useful for tracking how much money you were spending, because half a watt versus 1 watt, or half a watt for each transfer, knowing that you sent some money is not as useful as knowing that you sent $1 million. So the mathematical dimension of numbers, the symbol of what was sent, is a more useful dimension. So what we're looking at, given that we have an emotional or a feeling dimension, is why is it useful? What can one reveal with the feeling dimension that one may not be able to reveal with other dimensions? And one of the most important things that we can see through a feeling dimension, through the observing and measuring device of the human heart, is the relationship with values and human needs. So for example, when we prioritize getting a move on, like when we're really antsy to get going and we run into heavy traffic, what do we feel? We feel incredibly frustrated, angry. Maybe we beep on the horn. And what this is revealing is the relationship between value and environment. So we're in an environment that isn't moving. and we've got a high value on moving, and so we've got high frustration. So feelings help us understand the relationship between what's going on inside and in our environment and our values. Because obviously, if we have a value of going incredibly slow and delaying, let's say we're mulling over a decision and we're dreading getting to work because we're going to have to confront this decision. Well, the same traffic jam with a value of delay and pondering becomes wonderful. It's like, oh, good news. I can explain that I was in traffic, and now I've got more time to ponder and mull. So there's a sense of delight with the exact same environment. So the feeling dimension reveals the intersection, the relationship between our values and what's going on. Now, one of the values that every human being holds is their human needs. Needs are not negotiable. So Abraham Maslow illustrated a hierarchy of human needs which begin with survival. I mean, you can't say that it's not a need to survive, because if you're dead, you're not human. So to be a human being, you need to survive. And right after survival, one needs security, because it's very difficult to express one's full humanity if you're expecting to die at any minute. You're very self-absorbed. You're not very observant of, what's going on with the species as a whole, because you're expecting to die when you have a need to survive. And similarly, if you don't have love and belonging in an interconnected culture, which is the third in the hierarchy of human needs, it's very hard to survive. Because if we look at the amount of cooperation that goes on with survival and security, it's enormous. Meaning every single person in the world right now is cooperating with my existence. Anyone on the planet could take me out in seconds. They're not doing that. In other words, I'm depending on 7 billion people not to shoot me in the next 5 seconds, or this video is over. So there's a tremendous amount of cooperation in existence. And love and belonging measures the degree of actual and anticipated cooperation. And so, you cannot have a high sense of security and survival in a sociopathic environment in which one expects that one or many people will cease to cooperate with our existence, either passively or actively. We also, of course, need trees to provide oxygen to survive, and if other people don't cooperate and cut down all the trees, we don't survive, our children don't survive. So love, belonging, survival, and security. Then we have self-esteem. We have a need to become the people we want to be. And suicide is one of the highest risks in the United States, for example. And the problem is that when you become someone you hate, rather than becoming someone that you want to become, your psychological pain goes up. You're not someone you can accept and you can support and you're proud of. And so you turn yourself off. And so you can't survive if you're killing yourself. So self-esteem is a continuum from hating oneself and participating actively in one's destruction to admiring yourself and taking exceptional care of yourself and your environment. Because if you're valuable, then the environment that supports you is valuable. If it's important that you live, it's important that the trees that give you oxygen live. If it's important that you live, it's important that the people around you don't have infectious diseases, which means it's important that they live. Because if you're surrounded by a community with deadly, contagious diseases, you can't feel very secure in your survival. Love and belonging is certainly very short-lived if you're dead. So the more valuable one is, the more care one takes of the environment that produces that which is valuable. It's a mathematical interconnected formula. The golden goose is valuable, more valuable than the golden egg. So if you're the golden egg and you're valuable, then the environment, the culture, the country, the community, the natural environment, the energy field, all of that becomes as valuable as you value yourself. And they're interconnected. Devalue the environment and you devalue yourself. Devalue yourself and you devalue the environment. So it's an important part in sustainability to have self-esteem. And so feelings tell us how we're doing. If our goal is to be honest and we tell lies all the time and we hate ourselves because our ideal is honesty and we're not it, then feelings, that feeling of hatred, will tell us the gap between the ideal that we want to be and who we actually are. So it's a measure of values. And this is perhaps one of the most important purposes of having an observing and measuring device called the human heart, which reveals the full spectrum of human feelings. Now, one of the other things that feelings are part of an interconnected synergy. Now, Western culture is very good at making compartmentalized distinctions, but there is no ultimate closed system in the universe. Meaning the mathematical formula that is existence is a long, interconnected formula that depends on every part of the energy system that is in it. Because no energy is created or destroyed. It just changes form. So when this body dies, it becomes nitrogen, it becomes phosphorus, it becomes trace minerals, it becomes potassium. And the trees that help this body live in life are nourished as this body decomposes, as this body shifts form from the form of a human being back into nutrients for the natural ecology. And it is impossible to get rid of the influence of any portion of the energy field. Right now, this body is affecting things on multiple dimensions that ripple out. And admittedly, the impact of, on the electromagnetic field, for example, of me operating electricity right here in San Francisco is minimal over in Singapore. It's a very diffuse, like ripples in the pond. It's fainter and fainter the further one gets away. But there's still an influence. It's just how sensitive is our ability to measure the influence. But you can't get away from the equation. And similarly, body, heart, and mind, body, thoughts, and feelings are interconnected. So every single sensation in my body affects the intensity of feeling and the nature of feeling to some degree. Every feeling, in order for me to be conscious of it, changes my physiology. Every feeling strengthens certain thoughts and weakens other thoughts. Every thought strengthens certain feelings and weakens other feelings. So if I think today is going to be a great day, just saying that and thinking that, my body slightly changes. It prepares for a slightly better day. The energy rises slightly. I'm a little bit more present. Why? Because I want to be in my body for a great day. If I say instead, today is going to be an absolute slog of misery, drudgery, mediocrity and suffering, and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, I don't enter my body and say, gee, let's sharpen all the observing measuring devices so I can really be present for every nuance of that suffering. I cringe. I don't want to be here. Maybe I tighten my muscles to kind of create muscular white noise between me and my reality. I don't want to be here. And so it changes my physiology. Now, I don't feel excited when I say that, when I say it's going to be an absolute day of suffering and drudgery. I feel kind of sad. It's like, I guess this is the best I can do. It's kind of sad, isn't it? And that brings me to the next point, which is that what we're measuring through the human heart on the dimension of feeling is the level of mastery. Now, here's what I mean by that. Every human being in the history of humankind wants to feel chronically good and wants to avoid feeling chronically bad. There's no one in the history of humankind who does not want to feel better. And in this way, the dimension of feeling is a compass towards mastery. Because what creates feeling good? Not failure. Not failure failure to arrive on time, failure to get out of bed, failure to get your arm to operate, failure to arrive home in one piece, maybe an arm missing. That doesn't make you feel chronically good. What makes you feel chronically good is success. So, and success at what? Well, there's a whole pyramid of states and feelings and drives that feel good, but way up at the top is fun. Meaning, we want to feel free so that we have choice, so that we can choose something that's successful because it's more fun. Why do you want to be successful? Well, you don't want to be successful at suffering. You don't want to be successful at dying an early grisly death. No, you want to be successful at what? At having fun. So, at the top of the pyramid of human states is chronic, masterful fun. Sustainable, successful fun. In one form or another, the fun of pleasure, the fun of wonder, the fun of dimensionality, the fun of love, the fun of touch, the fun of taste. Multidimensional, sustainable fun is where we're all heading. And we're heading towards chronic, sustainable, multidimensional fun through an interesting learning feedback loop. Because when we do something that is not sustainably fun, our pain goes way up. When our pain goes way up, it's not fun. And we do everything that we can to reduce the pain and increase our sustainable fun. So when we increase and succeed at increasing our sustainable fun, it's more fun than not doing so. It's more pleasurable to have fun than not to have fun. And so we know we're heading in the right direction. So if you understand that the most masterful human being that you could imagine is someone who can interact with the possibility field that we all share to create nonstop, dimensional or multidimensional high levels of sustainable fun. One of the reasons that that's an expression of mastery is that no one in a state of complete mastery says, I think I could do anything. I could have lots of great success and fun and abundance and gratitude and joy and pleasure and, beautiful music and beautiful taste. And, but I think I'd rather go eat at McDonald's and feel sluggish and shitty. Now, eating at McDonald's might be great if you're on the street and, hungry and all of that. But if you've got gourmet organic foods from all around the environment, when you've got beautiful environments rather than red, yellow, and glaring colors, when you've got Beethoven symphonies or something else that you find, beautiful rather than the noise of other people eating next to you, well, it's not as fun, is it? And so the most masterful person that you can imagine is someone who's playing a high game of sustainable fun. Anyone who isn't experiencing sustainable fun, in other words, lacks the ability to do so. It's not a choice. Now, there is an interesting hiccup along the way, which is that feeling helpless, feeling powerless, feeling out of control is so unfun for many people that if people don't have certainty that they can create success and joy and all that, they'll often choose certain misery to feel more in control. So if you say, well, I could walk up to that beautiful woman and ask her for a date, but she's probably going to say no. Of course she's got a boyfriend and this and that and the other. She's probably going to say no. Well, that's no fun. I don't want to go up and have a 95% chance of being rejected and then just feel like a schmuck. I don't want to feel that. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to sit here and brood about the way that, life never works for me. Because I've got control there. It doesn't seem to work, and so that I feel in control. I have that thought, it matches reality, I did that. But the thought that I'm really attractive and I want to go out and create success and this and that, and then 9 times out of 10 someone rejects me, I just feel out of control. So I'd rather feel certain in misery than I would feel out of control and just bound to fail one of these days. So when you have that feeling, the other shoe's going to drop, the other shoe's going to drop, sometimes we drop it. We just say, get rid of this. I'm not going to even try. I'm not going for it because I don't want to feel out of control. So there is a little bit of a catch in that thing, but that's why I make the distinction between masterful fun, meaning if you can create as much fun as you want, literally as much as you want every single time, no one in that state says, let's be miserable today, just for fun. It's not fun to be miserable. So it is a measure of mastery, one's feeling state in terms of fun, joy, pleasure, wonder, gratitude, love, safety. These are all fun states. So if you know what you're doing with confidence, and you have the power of that confidence and mastery, you always have a reality that is fun for you at that time. Fun evolves just like everything else. Success evolves just like everything else. But someone who is in mastery is having fun. So to the degree that one is in low, feeling states, hatred, bitterness, reflects one's mastery. Now, obviously, many of these things are part of the human condition. If you're madly in love with your dog is run over by a bus, you don't have mastery is the problem. You see, if you could flip your fingers and undo it, you wouldn't be miserable, would you? But we don't have that technology yet. We're getting more technology all the time, but we don't yet have the ability to say, nope, it didn't happen, undo time, and here's my lovely dog all over again. Because if we had that level of mastery, we would not grieve the loss of the dog. Because, wealthy people are cloning their dogs now, right? So they don't have to go through grief. And that's part of developing that mastery at some level with definite caveats and, concerns about, our lack of mastery around genetics and all of that. But they're doing that so they don't have to grieve the death of their dogs. I'm going to take my favorite dog, but it's still not the same. You see, because the dog doesn't have the same memories. The clone didn't have this experience with you and may not have that little tuft of hair, etc. And so it's still not a masterful reality. We're not at the point where when our best friend betrays us, for example, and runs off with our wife, right? Well, that's horrible. Why? Why is it horrible? Because we want our best friend and we want our wife and we don't want that to happen. And now we've got to choose. Because if we stay friends with a best friend that runs off with our wife, it's kind of a weak best friend, isn't it? It's not really a great best friend, so that's not what we want. Or if we try and court a wife who would betray us with our best friend, we don't want someone who treats us that way. But we also don't know how to go and replace a wife of 20 years or a best friend of 30 years with a snap of the finger. That's 30 years of development and work and memories, and we'll be dead in 30 years. So we don't have the mastery to recreate the experience we want. So it's miserable. What we want most seems out of reach. And so we're enraged at our best friend. How could you do this to me? I really need someone I can trust. And you've just told me that that's not you. And I need someone I can belong to, and you've just taken that person away from me. And I picked you. I said you're my best friend. And obviously I made a mistake because I picked you. Well, if I pick the next best friend, maybe I'll make the same mistake. You see? You've taken away my confidence in being able to choose good friends and my friend. You've taken away my confidence in being able to choose a good wife and my wife. You took both. Now, I'm without a best friend, without a wife, and I have no confidence that I can choose a wife or a best friend because I made a mistake that cost me 30 years. And I'm in a culture that isn't going to help me sort that out. So this is devastating. It's devastating because what I want most is outside of my mastery on two levels. One, I don't have it. And then two, I don't have any basis. See, because you have no reasonable confidence to be able to create anything that you haven't created successfully before. Confidence comes from successfully doing something. Well, I thought I successfully picked a best friend, and I thought I successfully picked a great wife. But the fact that you ran off with each other and lied about it and stole half my money at a time when I needed you meant that I was wrong. I made a mistake. Well, how are you going to know that you haven't made that mistake? Well, I guess you have to do it all over again with the same software that made the first mistake, because all you've got are your decision algorithms. And those decision algorithms led me to two corrupt individuals. That's 100% of the people closest to me were flawed using this algorithm, which is the only one I've got to do. So it's like, oh my goodness. So the amount of despair and misery and anger, etc., we're talking about a gap between mastery and reality. I want to be a masterful person who can just snap and create a new wife, a new friend, a new this. But I don't want to be insane. That could be one of my values. I value rationality. A rational person who's just had everyone close to them betray them does not rationally say that I'm a great picker of people. They rationally say, I don't know what I'm doing around people. Or they may rationally say that I did the best I could with the people available to me, but there's no good people to pick. Either one is a dismal reality. And so what feelings are revealing are the level of mastery. Because let's say we believe we're surrounded by mediocre, untrustworthy people, and we picked the best of the lot. Well, what that means is we don't have the mastery to teach them how to be better, trustworthy people. Because if we could just snap a finger and everyone became conscientious and honest and self-aware, and they became wonderful, wonderful people because we snapped our finger, then we would first snap our finger to create wonderful, wonderful people, and then we would snap our fingers again to marry and be friends with one of them or two of them or whatever. And then there would be no grief and no heartache. So negative feelings reveal the gap in mastery, the gap in technology to realize our ideals, our values. So that's an important source of data about the gap between the desired reality and reality. Now, you can also say that because there's a mathematical dimension that correlates with all energy. Anger has a certain amount of energy in certain muscles and different neurons and neuropeptides and all of this. So there's a mathematical code to anger and there's a mathematical code to joy. And that code is an intersection of environment, of values, but also, an awareness and technology. So you can also say that it reveals the mathematics of energy, that feelings are a clue into the mathematics of energy. A little less useful at looking at that level to try and understand mathematics through feelings. But much like there's a mathematics that underlies music, Stravinsky worked somewhat mathematically when he wrote The Rite of Spring, and other composers work a little bit more intuitively. But there is a connection between music and feelings and mathematics and color and sound and shape. The shapes one visualizes in The Rite of Spring versus the shapes one visualizes in Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. They're different shapes. They're different colors. The colors one tends to visualize when one's feeling depressed are different colors than the colors one visualizes when one is exuberantly joyful. So there's these different dimensions that are all revealing the same energy. So you could say that there's an amorphous energy that is multidimensional. And then that all of these different dimensions, geometry, mathematics, history, time, space, texture, color, music, random sounds, ecology, that all of these dimensions of perceptions are doorways into something that is revealed through the language of that dimension, or rather a face of it is revealed. A very small face in an infinite number of faces. You can also talk about the level of consciousness and brain development is revealed in the feeling dimension. For example, if you're dealing at a reptilian level with fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as your primary operating system, you're primarily dealing with fear at that level in a sociopathic survival program. So anyone who is reduced through severe trauma and PTSD into the reptilian brain is going to have a lot of fear, hate, anger, that kind of dimension. And so one can tell the level of brain development by the feelings that are predominating in an environment. But the level of brain development in an individual, of course, mirrors the level of brain development in the culture around it. Meaning people don't just get highly traumatized and abused and develop PTSD in a vacuum. There has to be a highly incompetent culture that is producing systemic abuse, trauma, and exhibiting sociopathic tendencies before an individual is traumatized and abused to a point where they occupy their reptilian brain. So you can tell about the level of brain development and consciousness in the individual through one's feeling state, but you can also then extrapolate from that, all individuals being a mirror of the environment in which they're born and raised. You can extrapolate from that to say that the environment is as sociopathic as the sociopathic tendencies exhibited by its individuals. Highly transcendent, highly empathic, highly intelligent and masterful cultures raise highly transcendent, highly masterful, highly conscious individuals. So it's a reflection on a level of consciousness and the regions of the brain that are in play at both an individual and a cultural level. And you can also look at the level of integrity, which is another way of talking about mastery. Because when you look through the transcendent multidimensional state of consciousness, you see a vast equation occurring on infinite dimensions as one integrated whole. Western consciousness, through language in particular, takes the whole and refracts it into 60,000 different parts contained in language. This is a pinky, this is a ring finger, this is a middle finger, this is a this. But when you look at it multidimensionally and mathematically, all the zeros and ones are part of one big equation, functioning in synergy, functioning as one. But when you look at it through a very compartmentalized, refracted consciousness, it's all different parts. And not only are there different parts, the different parts are all fighting one another. Because you have this thing with identity. If I identify with the pinky, and the pinky gets severed, say, now I don't exist anymore. And so there's the terror of going from existence to non-existence. But when you're looking at it through a mathematical lens, no energy is lost or destroyed. One thing is becoming another thing, which is becoming another thing, which is becoming another thing. And when you identify with all of it, when you identify with the one, when you look at it as an integrated whole, which means you have integrity, you have integration with all of it, then there's not so much fixation. They've shown, for example, that very healthy children can go from playing hopscotch to going in the house to watching a movie to doing this because they're not encapsulated with a rigid identity. The more traumatized an individual is, the more afraid of change they are. The more afraid of change you are, the more you want to cling to anything that you're doing, and you don't want to change. No, I don't want to stop doing this. I don't want to do this. I want to find, it's one of the reasons there's a correlation between trauma and addiction, is the traumatized person has faced so much potential self-dissolution, dissolving. You know, when you're hit violently by a giant, you are afraid you won't exist in a moment. Now, when you've had a lot of experiences that threaten to dissolve your sense of who you are, one backlashes, one counteracts by trying to obsess and fixate on strong identities. This is me and no one can take it away from me. I won't let it go. I won't let it go. Because what's being taken away is this me, this identity. And there's no trust of the fluid unknown, because the fluid unknown has brought so much shock, so much violence. I don't want to let it go because I don't want to face the unknown. So you can see the level of integrity also leads with a grace with change. I will become this, then I'll become this, then I'll become this, then I'll become this, then it'll get worse, then it'll get better, then it'll become worse over here, then it'll get better over here. And there's much more fluidity, much more integration, much more fear much more fearlessness, much more embrace and curiosity with the whole, with moving beyond the limited sense of self. So these are some of the things that can be measured in feelings. And so one of the things that feelings are is stimuli plus environment plus thoughts/beliefs. So that equals feelings. Now, emotion is a little different, because emotions are cultivated circuits within the body, within the brain, within the heart and mind. So a feeling is like, I meet you for the first time and you slap me and I feel a little surprised. So this would be a feeling. It's an immediate equation of interaction in the moment. Emotions develop over time, and they include a lot of memory. When you feel a deep sense of love and the person isn't there, you're running a program in your mind. You're playing this memory and that memory and this thing. So you have memory plus attention plus intention equals emotion. And there may be new feelings present as well. For example, if the person you have developed a deep emotion of trust and gratitude and love with slaps you in the face, you'll feel surprise, but the emotion will not be shaken, because you've got a whole construct that, 95% of the time they're the love of your life, and then there's this momentary interruption in that program. So an emotion is an internalized program that's relying on memory, attention, and intention, whereas feelings are direct equations. I value this. This is what's happening. This is how I feel. This is how I feel physically. This is how I feel, through the human heart emotionally. And it's useful to understand that the human heart is a scientific instrument that measures energy in a variety of different formats, and that there's a possibility field, meaning the human heart can measure any feeling that has ever been felt. So it's like an infinite color spectrum. So the heart, the human heart, which is a psychological, biological synergy, measures energy as it interacts between environment, our belief and thought patterns, and our values, which are part of our thought patterns. We value something because we believe that that's a good thing to value, for example. If we believe that anger is a sign that something's gone wrong, and that it's a useful feeling, then we will value feeling angry, and we will try and stop whoever is making us angry from doing whatever it is that they do that is making us angry. If we say that anger is bad, and that the world is happening for the best, for example, and we feel angry, we'll try and analyze what's wrong with us that we're feeling angry. So there's complex intersections between body, heart, and mind. But on this color chart, of every possible feeling that's ever been felt by any human being that's ever lived, depending on what's going on in our life and what has gone on before, etc., we will be reading a variety of feelings. And because a lot is going on in our reality at any given point, there will be feelings about all of it. So I'm happy that my child made it across the street, but I'm angry that when I told her to stop, she ran across anyway. So I'm happy and angry at the same time. So I'm getting two readings about two different equations. I want her to listen to me because I have a better sense of when it's safe. So I'm angry that she didn't because she's decreased her safety. And if she dies in a car accident, I know I'm going to feel very sad. And I know I'm going to blame myself. And my wife may leave me and blah, blah, blah. And, so I'm angry that she's increasing her physical risk. But I'm glad that she made it across this time. So I'm glad and angry at the same time. Those are two different equations. And that's just around those two things. Meanwhile, I'm pissed off that my boss is, constantly looking at legs over competency. And so I may not get the promotion because I don't have the legs, I have the competency. I'm pissed off that everyone lets that go by. You all pretend to be capitalists focused on money. Legs are not making you any money. You're hypocrites. So, and then I'm angry that I'm in a cult that if I point these things out, I get sidled out and scapegoated rather than confronting the systemic corruption. So I've got all kinds of feelings about all kinds of things at all different moments, and they're all going on constantly about all these types of things all the time. And then I'm in a culture that says that being emotional is weak because it's feminine, a chauvinistic culture. So I'm not going into all these feelings because I don't want to look weak. They're all kind of a jumble, and they're building up, and all these messages, and my body isn't responding, and I'm not keeping up with them, and then I'm feeling overwhelmed, which is a feeling that you get in that kind of state. So you have the full range of feelings, and they're all happening at the same time. You have the full range of emotions, and they may or may not be, happening at the same time. And so these are readings. These are data readings that are coming out of the instrument of the human heart. So then the question is, how do you look at these readings? What do you do with the fact that you're angry that your daughter didn't listen to you when you told her to stop and she ran across the street? Well, if you find yourself furious, you can learn stuff about that. You can say, wow, I must really care about my daughter because if I didn't care about her, the reason I'm angry is because I'm afraid of losing her. Let's say our family doesn't have health insurance. And so I'm afraid of going from being someone who can pay my bills to someone who can't pay their bills. Even if she doesn't die, if she gets a $60,000 medical bill in a U.S. hospital with jacked up, corrupt healthcare rates, then my goodness, I go from being an upstanding person to, a deadbeat debtor, who can't pay his bills. And then I have judgments about deadbeat debtors, and now I'll have judgments about myself, and I can't get out of them. And she just made me feel those things. So maybe whatever, it's telling you that something went on that connects strongly with deep values. And if you know that it's really important to you to pay all your bills, etc., and you know then that your daughter is not going to listen to you, you can then make a decision. No, you're going to have to hold my hand. That's it. We're going to wear a wrist strap together or whatever, because this is really important to me, and it's not important to you. I mean, obviously you just ran across the street because chasing the butterfly was what's important to you, but not being a deadbeat debtor is what's important to me, and I've got the power, so you're going to do what I say, in the principle of physics where the mass dominates mass, it's I'm the giant, I have the money, the control, etc. So you're going to listen to my values, the dominance of superior mass. Or it may be if you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, you'll be mad at me when you're 30. Right now, you're mad at me for making you hold my hand. But how are you going to feel if you're going to look back at me and say, what? When I was 6 years old, I wanted to chase butterflies, and you let me be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? The person in the wheelchair might be mad at age 30, looking back and saying that wasn't much of a parenting job, and you might be mad at yourself. Yeah, it wasn't much of a parenting job. So this is what's being revealed with feelings. Now, here's an important thing to understand about. So there's a couple of distinctions. One is that you can break feelings down into yin and yang, negative and positive, expansive and contractive. So anger, hate, bitterness, despair, blah, blah, blah. These are contractive feelings. They're negative feelings. They're yang feelings. And then there's joy and gratitude and love and all of that. So there's two types of feelings. The other distinction is that there's a positive and negative expression of every feeling. For example, if you notice that you're really angry, that your daughter ran across the street when you said stop, there's a positive and negative expression that can occur out of that anger. Meaning if you read that and you say, you know what? I was angry 10 out of 10. The reason I was angry is I love this daughter so much that to lose her would be heartbreaking. What that anger is revealing is a deep attachment to a healthy child and a long life. It's also revealing just how much I love my daughter. So I feel furious. I translate the fury into the gap between wanting a healthy daughter and that being risked by her impetuousness. And I take steps to increase the health and safety of my daughter. Meaning I might run across the street after her and hold her tight and say, I was so scared I was going to lose you. I was so angry because I felt so out of control. I love you so much. Please help me keep you alive. That might be an emotional expression that would add value to the child and increase loyalty in that relationship. So that's one positive expression. The other expression might be, I've got to deal with the fact that this is a 6-year-old girl. She's not going to listen to words as much as spontaneous impulses. And so I've got to get a strap, not be in this kind of street, pay more attention. And so I'm going to make this change. And as a result of understanding how much I care about my daughter and understanding the situation, I'm going to change the situation. We're not going to spend so much time in busy streets. We're going to go out in the forest. And there she can run, and I don't have to feel terrified. When she's there, her spontaneity can go unchecked safely. So stay in the car, lock the doors, get to the forest, and then we're going to do that. So we're going to go to it. So there's a variety of positive benefits that can come out of a negative emotion. Now there's also the flip side, meaning you say, I feel deep love and happiness for you. And there's a variety of things you can do with that. Like, I felt really grateful. So now I'm going to trust you to have sex without a condom. And something negative can happen out of result of that, an unwanted pregnancy, a STD, a violation, a betrayal. Maybe you have a belief that people who have sex quickly are less valuable than people who have sex after great trial and error or tests. So the fact that I've opened up and had sex with you now means you're treating me worse than you did before. Well, that's not a good outcome. So my point is that there are constrictive and contracting feelings that are revealed simultaneously over all aspects of reality, different readings. That's what the human heart is designed for, is to bring consciousness and awareness into these arenas. And that we can either make things worse, like I could also punish my daughter. How dare you, you piece of shit! Meaning I didn't like being scared about losing you. I don't want to admit how much I care about you. So I'm going to make you feel like shit all day because you made me scared of losing you, and I'm a chauvinist who can't talk about love directly, and so I'm just going to punish the hell out of you. And as a result of bludgeoning you so much psychologically, you tune out to me even more, and you don't believe I care about you at all, and you're just not going to listen to anything that I'm saying. So that would be an example of the exact same situation. I'm terrified of losing you. I feel angry you ran across the road, and rather than telling you how much I love you and reestablishing rapport and making a change, I just shame the shit out of you to such a point where you disconnect. And now you don't listen to me about anything. Sex, drugs, money, prostitution. You're just not going to listen to me. And so that would be an example of a negative feeling that has a positive and negative potential result, leading to a negative result, which then leads to more negative feelings. If not handled well, then leads to more negative results. So every feeling can be expansive or contractive, and every expansive and every contractive feeling can produce more pain or more well-being systemically going forward, which is why it also comes back to a level of mastery. If you are emotionally literate, if you understand the science of your psyche, of your heart, of your feelings, you have mastery, then every negative expression leads to you changing the reality so that there's less negative feelings in the future. And every positive feeling leads to you reinforcing and changing reality so there's more positive things in the future, not just for you, but for those around, because all feelings are viral in nature. So if you're incredibly competent, you will spread large amounts of joy and well-being to all the people around you. And then it'll reverberate back towards you, because now you've got high feeling states coming back and forth. So the most competent scientist around understands the data fed out of the human heart through the muscle tensions and all of that, and brain chemistry and all that, to understand the gaps between value and reality in any given moment, and then uses that data to change reality to be closer to the desired reality, to change reality to fulfill more human needs. And as a result, the reality will produce more and more high feeling states. And there's one other thing, and this will be a reflection of intelligence and mastery. The other thing to be aware of is that if you think of, I don't know if you've ever watercolored, but one of the things you learn in watercolor and veil painting, for example, is, for example, you might do a blue veil, and then you might do a yellow veil. And where the yellow veil interacts with the blue veil, you get a green veil, meaning the colors combine to create new colors. Our TVs do that. Most of our TVs are either 3 primary colors or 4 primary colors. And out of those different, and the way TVs work is that every pixel can be told to be red, green, blue, or yellow, as an example of one of the color structures. And the electricity tells that pixel which of those to be. And through lots of combined yeses and nos, at high density, every color that you see in a 4K screen is produced through those simple mixes of core colors. So there are also core feeling mixes. And every feeling can be created out of those core feelings. And many feelings are mixes of other feelings. For example, hate is an interesting one. If you combine helplessness, that's one feeling. Now, it's important to understand that all feelings correlate to the environment. You don't feel helpless when you're receiving lots of help. So when you're feeling helpless, it correlates to an environment in which no one is helping you in the way that you understand help. For example, if someone is a chauvinist and they want to feel important, and as part of their chauvinism to accept help is weak, and they want to feel strong, that's what they really need help with, is to feel strong. If you help them by going over and giving them some money, say, you've just made them feel weak, because in their chauvinistic language, to receive a gift is weak. So you haven't helped them by helping them, because in their algorithm, the only way that they can feel big is to not receive any handouts, as they call it. Well, then you give them some help, and you've just helped them to feel weak within their chauvinism. And so there's some caveats when you say if someone feels helpless, it means nobody's helping them. So one can certainly say that if someone feels helpless, no one is helping them in the way that they would like and can register help. So that's the first recipe. If you have mastery rather than helplessness, you don't have hate. So first ingredient is helplessness. The next is pain. If you have high levels of joy and wonder, you don't feel hate. Pain plus helplessness plus a sense of betrayal or separation. These three feelings can combine to create hate. I hate you. Why? 1, because I'm in pain. 2, because I'm stuck here. I can't just flip my hand. I'm stuck here. And 3, I'm blaming you for it in some way. Why? You made me look bad, and now I'm stuck feeling bad for all time. You did this, and now I feel humiliated, and there's nothing I can do about it. Because if I say I feel humiliated, then I'm weak. But if I don't say I'm humiliated, I'm stuck in this humiliated, and no one can help me anyway, and so I'm stuck here. So it takes multiple feelings, just like it takes blue and yellow to get green. It takes helplessness, pain, and a sense of blame and betrayal of some kind to create hate. So, for example, if you want to get rid of hate, if you shame someone for having hate, it doesn't get rid of it. It freezes and numbs it. But if you help someone to step out of pain, the hate will lift. Or maybe they remember the pain and they're afraid of it happening again, so they hate you because it could happen again, but then you're in fear. So it's important to understand that there's an entire technology of feelings that most of us do not get a single competent professional hour, a single scientific hour of education in the entirety of our lives. And so this vast instrument that's feeding out data about reality at multi-dimensions all the time is like a stock ticker giving you all the stock prices of every single stock around. This is its value today. It went up 10%. This went here. This went this went that. It's giving you all this data, but you don't know how to trade the market. You don't know how to respond. You don't have a thesis for what to do. You know, if Google for one day trades at 10% of its value for its entire history, you don't have the thesis to say, buy Google right now and make billions. And then it goes up, you don't know what to do with that either. And so being emotionally illiterate is a profound disability, given that the feeling dimension is primarily designed to help us navigate and respond to the fact that each of our choices take us closer or further away from our values. And our feelings tell us as a compass which way we're going. And competency in response to those feelings can tell us what to do about the data that's coming in about which way we're coming and going.